Hello to everyone who has found your way here today. So the video today is going to be how dating evolved from primal instincts to technology and the modern mind. And even though this kind of strays away from some of the topics I usually talk about in my videos, I like it because it still has to do with a lot of things I talk about in science. For instance, behavior, evolution, morphology, anatomy, genes, and different mechanisms that exist in our ecosystems of life on Earth. And I want to give a special thanks to Charlie, the girlfriend of Keegan, who gave me advice for previous videos. So Keegan gave me some ideas for the video about sexuality in the animal kingdom, and now his girlfriend Charlie gave me an idea for this one, and I really appreciate that because I don't want to just make videos on the science topics that I'm interested in because that would kind of polarize everything that I talk about into just being liquid phase separation, glycobiology, and different things that I'm interested in science. And I don't want to just make my channel about that. I want to make my channel about a lot of different topics, but use the same framework to go over them using philosophy and science. So these are the papers. These are the three main papers I looked at to put together this presentation, and let's continue. So why do humans bond? What if the way you date, who you're attracted to, even how your brain works was shaped millions of years ago by one powerful force, sexual selection? And what if modern technology is now rewriting that system in real time? So these are some examples of sexual selection. You have intersexual selection and intrasexual selection. Human beings do both of them. It's kind of like a ensemble of all of these different ways that sexual selection can occur that exist in humans, and the reason why we have uh, different collages of them in each culture is because that cultural environment actually brings out these different forms of sexual selection. So an example that I like to give is fiddler crabs because it's kind of funny and it's easy to understand, and it's one of the first examples of sexual dimorphism that I was introduced to. So sexual dimorphism is just when sexual selection leads to a difference in phenotype. So a phenotype is just the way that females and males look, their structural appearances. And for fiddler crabs, females just have these tiny little arms that are the same size and they can easily feed because they're small and fit their body. And then the males have one huge, large arm or pincher because over generations, thousands of generations, the females have selected the males who have these big pinchers. And you can imagine why. It can help protect the females, but it can also help protect the females from the greatest predator of the fiddler crab, which is the humans. Because as you can imagine, humans aren't going to like eating these little bitty arms of the females. They're going to go after these big arms of the male fiddler crab. So humans preferentially pick the males to eat because you can eat all the meat in this arm. So the females had a quite devious plan to only mate with the males for generations and generations. They kept this going so that only the big the big pincher fiddler crab males would exist so they could protect them from not only predators but also the biggest predator, which is the humans who wanted to eat them. So that's kind of a funny way of understanding sexual selection and how female choice plays a role in that. So to continue, let's get some background. Human evolution isn't just about survival, it's about who gets chosen. And that single factor, mate choice, has shaped everything from our brains, our behavior, even our genes. So you can see this figure from the paper titled Mate Choice, Sex Roles and Sexual Cognition in Vertebrates. Mate choice turns cognition, or cognition turns mate choice. Which one is it? So you have all of these different factors that are part of mate choice, cognition, and the social role that we play in society. And all of that goes into sexual selection. So you can imagine how different environments and different cultures would select different aspects and factors that would end up going into the mechanism of mate choice and sexual selection. So basically, the environment that we make for ourselves is going to affect sexual selection. And that's what I'll get more into in later slides. So let's give an evolutionary foundation to it. In early primates, mating wasn't peaceful, it was competitive. Males competed intensely for access to females. Aggression and dominance determined reproductive success. And this pressure literally shaped the brain. Male brains evolved stronger subcortical systems tied to aggression and spatial awareness, so they can fight off the lions and tigers and protect the females. Female brains emphasize the neocortex, enhancing social intelligence and emotional processing. And this is making it more black and white. It's really more gray, but for simplicity, we're just going to leave it at that. So why did this occur? Because females were the choosers. They needed to evaluate social signals, emotional stability, long-term partnership. Meanwhile, males needed to compete, display, and win. They needed to win by, learning how to take down the biggest woolly mammoth so that their tribe could continue and they would have meat to continue whatever they were doing. And we can see these same patterns and these same mechanisms in birds. You can have birds that have, in this case, you have a blue male. In this one, you have a normal looking male compared to the female bird. So the more blue male can be selected, but it's up to the female to either resist or invest in that selection, and she's just basically going to pick whatever is going to increase her survival. But that's clear cut when you're living in nature and you have lions and tigers, or for birds, you would have other survival strategies and stuff you have to deal with. So it's clear cut when you're living in nature and you have clear survival strategies like defending yourself against predators. But when you put yourself in civilization, some of that gets confused, which we'll see in future slides. So before we were talking about the beginning of human sexual selection, when we were transitioning from primates to Homo sapien or hominid type creatures like Neanderthals, humans, and other humanoids. So now, after we after we started to become more Homo sapien like, we shifted toward pair bonding and monogamy. This changed everything. Male competition decreased, and as a result, female choice increased. Social cooperation expanded. So, since you had this social cooperation and we started living in bigger groups, males didn't have to compete as much because the group could protect itself. So therefore, female choice increased when it comes to sexual selection. Their role in sexual selection increased and the males decrease. And this wasn't just social, it was neurological. A feedback loop emerged. Genes, hormones, brain, behavior, society, back to genes. So you can see how that feedback loop is created. This loop allowed for rapid changes in behavior, increased cognitive complexity, the rise of culture, language, and long-term planning. In simple terms, love and partnership help unlock human intelligence. And that's why it can be argued that humans are the most loving animals on the planet because we love each other enough to form these big civilizations that are willing to help everyone that's a part of it. So, historical dating behavior, fast forward through history, and let's just go through it. Tribal societies, mating tied to survival and group structure. That's when we were more like our great ape cousins, like the chimpanzee and the bonobo. Agricultural era, marriages became economic alliances. Pre-modern times, family and religion controlled mate choice. 20th century, romantic love becomes central. Each phase changed the balance between competition, choice, social structure. But one thing remained constant. Human mating behavior is always shaped by the environment. That's what we talked about earlier. And you can see in this graph that net food production and survival impacted human foragers versus chimpanzees. You can see that chimpanzees, their survival is a lot less than humans. And that's because of their net production. Their net food production is about half as much as the human production. Therefore, the environment that we're choosing to make for ourselves will dictate the survival of the species. So this is just one of many examples of how our behavior and how our environment that our behavior creates will affect our survival and what genes will be passed on. So modern disruption is technology. So now we're going to get into modern times. And you can get into sexuality and read more papers about it. So now we've entered a completely new environment. Technology has fundamentally altered sexual selection. Let's break it down. Dating apps, platforms like Tinder, amplify visual selection, compress mate choice into seconds, create winner-take-all dynamics. And compress mate choice into seconds just means that you're either going to swipe left or right. So it's just a few seconds and you've already made your decision. This resembles earlier primate systems, high competition, emphasis on appearance, reduced depth of evaluation. And I gave the example of Tinder because I think that's the best example of a compressed mate choice. But I think that there's a variety of different dating apps, and some of them may be have more positive, some of them may be more negative. It just depends. I'm not trying to say all dating apps are bad, good things can happen. But I think most people know that on apps like Tinder, most people are looking for one thing and it's not a long-term relationship. So, to continue modern disruption in technology, let's talk about social media. Apps like Instagram and TikTok turn individuals into performers, increase comparison and perceived competition, distort mate value perception. And I think this is a good example because Instagram and TikTok, it's just either a picture or a really fast video, and that's all you're seeing, a really quick video. You're not really understanding what's going on. So that's just a performance. You're not really learning too much. Where platforms like YouTube, you can actually make a long video that can be very formal and have a lot of information in it and be polished with a lot of literature. So I think platforms like YouTube can be used for the same negative things on society as Instagram and TikTok, but obviously you also have some channels that are trying to actually get information out there that might be helpful. So instead of small groups, you're competing globally when you're on platforms like this. And you also have kind of a taboo topic, but pornography with platforms like Pornhub, sexual novelty is unlimited, reward systems are overstimulated, real world bonding can weaken. And this can actually have a huge effect on the neuroscience and the morphology of the brain in humans. So, from a neuroscience perspective, dopamine pathways are hijacked, expectations become unrealistic, pair bonding may be disrupted in a lot of cases. This directly interferes with the evolutionary system that once promoted long term bonding. So what we see is a mismatch in countries that have a lot of these technologies implemented into their cultures, especially in a negative way. So, what is an evolutionary mismatch? The key idea is our brains evolved for a completely different mating environment. Small tribes, limited options, deep social evaluation. Now we face infinite options, instant gratification, algorithm driven attraction. This creates what scientists call an evolutionary mismatch. And this graph shows you that 90% of modern life is mismatched with how we evolved to thrive. So the environment that we created for ourselves does not potentiate how our molecular mechanisms and our information processing works in our body. And I think most people can get a feel that that's going on. And so daily life in weird countries versus our evolutionary design. And weird, I really don't like, kind of that name, but it stands for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. So it's actually the more progressive countries are making an environment that that doesn't fit our innate mechanisms for how we have learned to survive. So I'm totally for progressive ideas. However, I think we should be a little smarter on how this technology is used. And all I'm saying is we should put a little bit more education in some of these technology, whether in some of the technology, whether it be education about who you're looking at when it comes to something like Tinder or even a TikTok video. Is this information actually valuable and true or not? So anyway, to continue where this is headed. So what happens next? Sexual selection will continue shaping us, but now through technology. That means preferences may shift rapidly. Social behaviors may evolve faster than biology. The balance between bonding and competition may destabilize. We could see declines in long-term relationships, increased polarization in mate selection, or new forms of connection we don't understand yet, like AI. And an example would be AI on a headset, or even an AI humanoid looking person that you can really touch. Who knows where we're headed? So the take home is human evolution was transformed by a shift toward connection, cooperation, and pair bonding, but today we may be reversing parts of that system. The question is, are we still shaping sexual selection, or is it now shaping us? And I would say that right now it is shaping us in a big way through the things that we talked about, but we need to rethink it and be a little smarter about it. So we need to put as a part of these dating apps or any form of technology that we're trying to get it from. We need to make ways that it can be more educational, and I'm not trying to be boring about that, but in a way where we can at least know it's accurate information. So, how can that be done? A little literature, like I do in my videos. I show you where I'm getting it from. It's papers from actual scientists, so you can read deeper into it and understand where they're coming from, what mechanism in the ecosystem they're talking about, and you can start to understand how all these things really work, and maybe you can expand on it yourself. And I think that would really potentiate society and lead to a better future. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you have a good day.